Hi, today I wanted to talk to you about the process for developing connected wireless medical devices. So let's take it one term at a time, starting with the end, medical devices. Anytime you're developing a medical device, you're going to want to follow a process that essentially is dictated by FDA, and it's aligned with what's given by ISO 1345. So it's 5 or 6 steps around that. First gathering user needs, so understanding who's the user, what's the intended use, what are the indications, what are the user requirements, what does this product need to do for the user. From that, you can then generate design inputs, which are all the requirements, like the system level requirements, the subsystem requirements, and usually you do that alongside development of an architecture for the product. Those go hand in hand because depending on the architecture, you'll have different subsystems and different requirements for those subsystems. So that's the design inputs phase. After that, you go through the actual engineering process. So developing the device, writing code, doing schematics, doing layout, doing CAD drawings and prototyping, all of that. And at the end of that phase, what you have are design outputs, which are all of your drawings, your schematics, your source code, your packaging, anything that's required for launching your product. From that, you go through a design verification phase. So that's ensuring that your design outputs meet your design inputs. In other words, that this thing that you've designed, that each of the levels of subsystems and then the whole product as a whole meets the requirements that you set up in your design inputs. So that's your design verification phase. And then after that, you've got your design validation phase. So that's ensuring that the final product, that the final design meets the user needs. The last phase of this would be transfer to manufacturing. So that's where you take all of your design outputs, you create what's called a device master record, and you transfer that over to a contract manufacturer, or if you have manufacturing capabilities in-house, you do that in-house. But you go through that whole process of taking all of these design outputs and transitioning them to manufacturing. So that's generic product development. There's some best practices within that allow you to ultimately launch a better product. At Boltype, we like to use Agile, for example, in some of our software development to split up the overall development into phases and do some user testing over that period of time. So be iterative about it so that you eventually launch a better product. But from a general point of view, that's what's required for practically any medical device. When it's a wireless medical device, you have a couple of additional steps that you have to take. The first one is selecting the right architecture. So let's say you're developing a blood pressure monitor that wirelessly connects to a cellular phone, and then that data goes to the cloud. Well, the first thing you have to do is select what type of wireless connectivity are you going to have. Is it going to be Bluetooth low energy? Is it going to be Wi-Fi? Are you going to go directly with a cellular technology like a 4G, or like an LTE mobile, like LTM, which is a very low power version of cellular, such that the data goes directly from the device all the way to a cell tower and from the cell tower to the cloud? That might be another approach. So you have to select the technology that you're going to use. Then you have to develop the product, so that's normal. Importantly, during the verification test, there's a couple of other tests that you're going to have to do, such as like the electromagnetic compatibility. So IC 6601 is used for safety standards of electrical medical devices, and there's a general one, but there's also some specific ones for things like electromagnetic compatibility. So that's an extra test that you would have to do if it's a wireless product. And then, of course, FCC. You have to make sure that you're not going to be violating FCC rules that get you in trouble. So you want to make sure that you're not radiating outside of the bands that you're supposed to be in, that your output power isn't too high, that your bandwidth isn't too wide or too narrow, those sorts of things. So that's the wireless piece of it. And then last, there's the connected piece of it. So you're connecting to the cloud, and you have to ensure that you've got proper cybersecurity, really, really important. So make sure that your product, that you do proper risk analysis and you mitigate for any potential risks. It's different if you've got something like I mentioned earlier, like a wireless blood pressure monitor, than if you've got like a pacemaker, right? If somebody hacks the blood pressure monitor, the risks associated with that are not as high as if somebody hacks a pacemaker. So you have to do proper risk analysis around that and then put in place proper risk controls. You have to have the right architecture, and then you can incorporate features like over-the-air software updates. So that's a really valuable feature. It means that after you launch a product, if there's an update that you want to make, if you want to improve the functionality, if you want to fix a bug that you found, you don't have to recall the product and bring it back. You can do an over-the-air firmware update or an over-the-air software update that improves the product while it's in the field. And there's some regulatory things that you have to keep in mind, but you don't have to necessarily go through a new 510K to do that. So it's one of those strong benefits, but you have to make sure you do it right, because if you do it wrong, you can effectively damage the product. You can brick it. You can make it such that the device no longer functions and you can't update it. So it's really important to get that right, but it's a very powerful feature. So those are some of the processes that you follow to develop connected wireless medical devices. We strongly believe that if your device is not connected to the cloud, you risk obsolescence. And we should talk. I'm Jose Bohorquez, a Bold Type.